What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Amanda, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's been a minute. Are you still out in Arizona?
Yeah.
Are you loving it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a real question?
Getting ready for the outside part of the year?
Yeah, this summer was brutal. I love the heat, but it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, we have some clients that just moved out there from here, and she's like, we checked in last week, and she was like, "Yeah, we're ready to be outside," but that has not been
Yeah.
an option yet. So,
It was so hot you couldn't even swim. Like the pool was hot. It
yeah,
was not nice.
second shower of the day. What's up, Stephanie? How's it going? All right. Well, I know we're running a couple minutes behind here today, so we'll go ahead and jump right in. As always, I would love participation. So if you have questions, comments, if you have examples, I intend on spending at least a couple minutes on like the market of the moment because fortunately or unfortunately, as we know, data that came out in August is really kind of an example of what activity in the market looked like in July at best, maybe even the end of June. And so I think that the market has definitely shifted even since then. And so I think the more we share as a collective, the more valuable this can become. So if if you've been doing business lately, I'd love for you to be ready to answer a couple questions about how things are going, what you're seeing, what areas you're seeing are moving well, what areas you're seeing that maybe aren't moving so well, whether you've personally noticed price points or geographic areas that are better or worse. Because mostly because I'm curious, I guess selfishly, but I think that could also help a lot of other people. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then and jump right in. All right, so hopefully you're in the right place. This is market update for September, mostly for Columbus, Ohio, but Allison, you changed this, and I'm not sure what you changed, so we're just going to skip it.
I just made those numbers easier to read on that one slide.
Okay. I don't know why. What if I don't want the latest version? There we go. All right, cool. And you guys can't see, but the control thing is blocking my ability to do the slideshow. So, all right, there we go. All right, so for those of you guys that don't know me, which I think probably most of you do already, I've been an agent since 2004. I'm in the Columbus market. I think looking through quickly, most of you are in the Columbus market. I do have a real estate team called the Marsh Home Group. We are always adding amazing agents. So definitely not trying to poach anybody off of another team. But if you're a single agent and looking for a team, would love the chance to talk to you. I'm a real estate investor. I own 15 units, including 2 Airbnbs. And I also do real estate coaching for I Love Coaching. So if you have any interest in any of those things, always feel free to reach out to me. And then I'm also, you can find me on social media at Instagram and Facebook as well. And with that, we'll jump into the market. So I don't have a ton of like new topics to talk about because unfortunately there aren't a ton of new things to talk about in terms of overall subject matter. But obviously, updates on where we're at in the market is what I think most of you guys are here for. So we'll jump right in. So inventory, active listings are still down year over year. So one of the interesting things that I believe will continue to happen, and most economists that I listen to believe will continue to happen, is that because fall of last year, really into the middle of summer, through fall, through about December, the market slowed so substantially compared to the way it had been our year over year numbers are probably going to look better, meaning the market is going to continue to look better. Now, if we continue to see, which we'll get into in a minute, higher rates persist here this year, I think we could fall back into a similar pattern to where we were last year, maybe. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but maybe we are already there. Obviously, data is looking backwards, though, at what already happened. But one of the reasons why we're down in terms of active listings is because the slowdown last year definitely started in earnest, like in May, June timeframe. Whereas this year, I feel like maybe it waited until July, maybe even beginning of August in many markets before we started seeing that. So I think what we've seen both years is that we've seen interest rates rise at the same time that we go into a traditional seasonal slowdown, which is around that July, August, September timeframe. And so those two things together really have caused the market to feel like the floor just kind of dropped out of us, but we'll keep looking. Pendings are down year over year by 11.5%. I do think the lower pendings are obviously a result of fewer listings in the market. And we'll continue to see that certainly on a national level. I also think for those of you that are in Columbus, which we'll get into the local stats here in a little bit, but obviously our market has been a little bit more resilient than the average nationally. So new listings. So if you guys look at this line right here, and maybe I will try to look for a laser pointer here. This yellow line was 2022 last year. You can see how the new listings really peaked in June. And then when those rates started to get up over 6%, like the new listings just completely fell off. And so we're actually lower in terms of new listings, but you can see this trend line from last year. We would anticipate based on previous years, which these are all the pre-pandemic years, that we're probably going to see a drop off as well. The question is, will we stay lower than last year's trend line? And I don't think any of us know that. I think based on the way things have been going, I would anticipate that we'll probably see a similar trend line this year, especially with rates being as high as they are and most people just not wanting to sell their rate on their current property. Days on market is up compared to last year. But again, days on market are always based on solds. And remember, solds are 30 to 60 days old, especially when we look at national averages. And so I would say that for the most part, days on market are very similar to where they were last year at this time in the current market, meaning in mid-September. But as we move into fall, if rates were to drop below 7% before November, December, like it did last year, I think we could start seeing improvement in the market sooner, but we'll see on that. And again, we'll get into that here in a minute. Median listing price. So remember, this is listing price, not sales price. It's up 0.7% compared to last August. You can see that the prices really started to drop off last year. Now, the one thing, and I talk about this every time, but as we enter fall season, you can see that it's very normal that we see the listing price and the sales price actually go down for the second half of the year. Most people don't realize that we do look at year over year pricing, but when you look inside of one 12-month period, typically we see things start to go up for the first half of the year, and then they kind of they don't bottom out for the 12-month period, but they do peak in June and July and then start going down. And I do think some of that is not necessarily that prices go backwards during that time. It's more so that due to the school schedule and when people like to move, i.e. not in the middle of the winter, that you have more of the expensive real estate that tends to sell in the spring and summer. And that leads to the median and average prices being higher during those months than in the winter months, where you tend to have people that don't have the means to maybe own 2 houses, or don't have the means to move when they want to, they move when they need to type of situation. So so this is a very normal phenomenon, but it's something that was definitely more pronounced last year. And I believe that if we continue at these high rates, we could see this trend happen again this year, which again, we'll kind of get into when we get into conclusions. So trend wise, price reductions have been trending upwards a little bit more than normal. We usually see things kind of level out this time of year. We will definitely see we're 3.1% below last year, but you can see last year, this yellow line, they definitely kept going up through October. And then in November, when rates started to come down, the number of price reductions dropped off. That's also a seasonal thing as well. It'll be interesting to see if September we continue to see more price reductions. I don't know if any of you guys follow Altos Research, but I would recommend, if you're a numbers nerd, to do that. Every week he looks at the weekly market. He does like a 15-minute video, and nationally price reductions have been kind of inching up with the higher rates. So I would anticipate that as we move into September numbers next month, we'll still see that number increasing. We've talked about this the last few months, but it continues to hold true. Our median list price is definitely up year over year. New listings nationally are down, and then obviously that results in a lower active listing count. But I just love this number from a talking point perspective. And so I would say, if you're going to take anything that we talk about today and put it into a presentation, or just, I think the saying is like another arrow in your quiver. I don't know where the heck that came from, but that just popped into my head. This is the thing right here. The median list price currently versus pre-pandemic. So what they did is they went from 2017 to 19 in the 50 largest metro areas combined, and compared it to the August 2023. The average person in the US has, if you do a quick average of this, it's probably right around 37 to 38% more equity than they did before, assuming they haven't done a cash out refi from before the pandemic. So everybody's houses that has owned one since before the pandemic has another 35 to 40% worth of equity. And as we know, in certain neighborhoods and areas, that number is even higher. That should be the conversation point that we're having, is that prices would have to drop by 40%. And to put that into perspective, during the Great Recession in 2008, which was a housing caused recession, prices only dropped on average 25%. So we could have another 2008 happen, and the average person would still have 13% equity, more equity than they did in 2020 or 2019. That's pretty significant, because all the people that are out there saying that the market crash is going to cause them to be in a terrible position, this is really the number that you can point to and say, no, I don't think so. I think a lot of people might choose to sell if they lose their job, but they have a ton of equity that they get to transfer to their next property. Interest rates, obviously, I've mentioned them several times. They continue to be the news, in my opinion. You can see that for the most part, we spent a good chunk of our spring. We spent a good chunk of time since November of last year below this 7% number, which I never thought that I would say 6.5% would be somewhere that we wanted to be with regards to mortgage rates. But the reality is, last year in October, we saw rates go above 7, and this was by far the slowest time in the market. And then this year, there were a couple of weeks of spikes, both in May and in July, that kind of went above 7. But this period of time right here, where we've stayed consistently above 7, in my opinion, is what we're seeing in the market in terms of a slowdown. And I think we'll based on these two periods of time and what's happened each time, I think it's fair to say that the average consumer starts to get very uncomfortable with rates above 7%, whether it's a psychological thing. Now, do I think that over time the consumers will become comfortable with that? I really do. Because they have to be. I've already started to see some of those people that over the last 12 months were just not interested in these higher rates begin to start calling me about properties again and say like, well, yeah, it would suck. It's really going to suck, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, they're still thinking about making the decision to buy and sell. So this would be a place where I'd love to stop talking for a second and find out from you guys, does anybody else have any specific experience? Is anybody else seeing the same thing I am, or what are you guys experiencing in terms of your average consumer or client? Are you seeing people start to loosen up on rates, or are you seeing people continue to not make buying decisions because of them? Anybody? Joel, what are you seeing, man? You're always selling houses.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to the rates, I have a lot of clients just asking, what the futures look like on them. And then, I always talk about 2-1 buy downs, try to get a little bit more insight to them about just different options for rates versus just what they're seeing, in the general media about, they're 7.5 or 8%. But then again, I'm pretty connected to a couple lenders. So I ask a lot of questions every week. Just making sure that I'm really dialed into, what's going on in the market and what we can see coming up. But I would say they're a little bit, overall, my clients are a little bit more accepting of that like 6.5 to 7 rate because they haven't seen a big drop recently. So.
Cool. Oliver, what about you? Nobody's going to turn their camera on next time if I pick on everybody with their camera on, huh?
No, it's been a lot of the same conversations. I do feel it feels pretty baked in at this point, and I think people still have the means to move. I think what we're encouraging them is to look at when rates do go down, do you really want to, there's so much pent up demand. It's just going to be that much more expensive though on the list price side of things. So I think right now is an opportunity to kind of get some soft deals out there. I think the market still feels fluid in a sense, but I also feel it's pretty soft. So if you're in it for the long game, just get in now. I mean, it's going to be harder once the rates do come back down because you're just going to have a lot of competition behind you again. I think everybody remembers how that felt too. So there's still a lot of cash in the market. I still see tons of cash offers out there. And so I mean, our cash buyers, they're still shopping. So that's kind of what I'm feeling.
Cool. Anybody else?
I agree too. I'm seeing a lot of the buyers who I've had who say they're going to wait, who are now saying, yeah, I think I'm going to start looking now. And also I'm having a lot of buyers who are wanting to look at new builds because of interest rates. So
yeah, I do have some info. Actually, it's the next slide, I think. Anybody else? No? All right, cool. Yeah, next slide here is, so this just came out today, but an interesting thing that we'll want to keep an eye on. I feel like throughout this whole year, the builders have kind of kept us in the game, right? They've all been building houses in spite of the fact that resale new listings have been down, 25%. But we saw housing starts drop off. And basically the builders are saying that's because they're not confident with interest rates that demand is going to stay where it is. Now, obviously they did that last year and then they, saw missed opportunity. There were a few builders that didn't do that and they definitely reaped the benefits of that. Whereas a lot of the builders who did stop building kind of regret it. if you listen to any interviews with any of them, but they did it. So it'll be interesting to see how big this downturn goes if rates stay high. But certainly a downturn in starts is something that we want to keep an eye on, because that's really a foreshadowing. And to Oliver's point, it's also, I feel like the extra new build inventory at the end of the year last year and beginning of the year really kind of helped bridge the gap. But if we don't have that extra inventory, the demand and craziness and chaos around the resale market could be insane if rates were to drop quickly. So obviously you guys all know this, but this is definitely something that will continue to be an issue. It gets to be really, really real money, right, for people on a monthly payment basis, just moving from a 3.25%, and some people are even below that, to a 7% or more rate. So all right, I talk about this every month, but I definitely think it's good to come and listen to this. But I think if you guys aren't practicing or taking one or two things away from this conversation and being able to regurgitate it to your clients, you're missing a big opportunity to be somebody that your people come to. I know Oliver's really good at doing videos to his clients or on social media. Maybe they're for me, I don't know, but either way, I enjoy them. Just kind of regurgitating what he's hearing out there, what's going on. And so really there isn't a ton of stuff that's changed compared to last month. And the biggest reason is because overall, and I don't have it on the slide here, but basically inflation was a little bit more than expected last month, but not crazy. And there were some offsetting factors that made it a little bit less concerning. I still think one thing I did not add on here, but the United Auto Workers Union is striking right now across the country, and that does impact economic numbers, especially when they last a really long time, because all those people, and there are a lot of people, for any of you that have lived in, I grew up in Toledo, but Toledo, Detroit, any of those areas that have large bases, their economies will definitely contract during a long strike, because the striking workers make a lot less money during that time since they're not working. And so so I think that has a chance to impact the overall spending over the short term. But the interesting and the kind of unfortunate thing is, with that, if it goes on for a long time, it might muddy the waters a little bit on the impact that these things have. But credit card debt is now in the trillions in the United States. And so the question is, and also savings left over from COVID is at, basically they're predicting, like, I think by next month, it'll all on average be gone for the average American consumer. And so the question is the consumer going to continue to load up on debt, or are they going to stop spending? And that's really the thing that's kind of kept inflation higher than where they wanted it to be. The other shoe to drop is going to be that the student loan payments resume, I believe, on October 1st for federal student loans. And for the average person is like $300 to $400 a month in student loan debt who has a government student loan. Some of them have never paid them. And for the people that have before, but it's been 3 years or over 3 years since they paid a payment. So adding basically another car payment into their budget starting next month is kind of a big deal. And I think it's something that we're going to see slow the economy down, because that $400 was being spent on other stuff, and now it's going to have to be spent on your student loan. Unemployment has still been stubbornly low, which obviously for average Americans is a really good thing, but the Fed wants to see employment slow down and see unemployment go up a little bit to show that inflation is going to lower. So again, all talking points, things that you can talk to your people about. Show your clients how they can buy a new home, pay off debts, and then also talk about down payments for investment properties using their equity. I do think that like I said before, the average homeowner has 38% more equity in their home than they did pre-pandemic. But because of the interest rates, it's kind of locked a lot of people out of that. So depending on what their situation is, like let's say they lose their job and their choices are file bankruptcy or take out a 7% cash out refi, they should probably consider doing the cash out refi, even though technically their monthly payment will be higher, in order to not completely lose everything. And so those, I think, are ways that you can begin to understand all of this stuff and help out your clients. Yeah. All right. So my opinion on the market, again, not super changed from last month. Buyer activity is down, obviously. I still think that target interest rate for buyer activity is somewhere around 5.5. Maybe it's moved up to 6 just because we've been above 7 for so long. I think, like Oliver, I think it was you, maybe it was Joel that said it, but I think the biggest question you ask your clients who are thinking about moving is, what's the likelihood over the next 3 to 7 years that prices are actually going to go down in the area that you live in? And I think especially if you're in the Columbus area, but really nationally too, the chances are just extremely low. We have very low supply. We have millennials who are the largest living generation now, most of which are at prime home buying age, and many of them still do not own homes. And so I think there's going to be significant demand over the next 10 years. And I just don't think we have enough supply in the market, and pretty much every other expert believes the same as well. I do think the shorter time horizons carry more risk. And that's mostly because, just like what's happening right now, the softness in the market, if you're flipping a property and you happen to finish at a time when rates go up to 7.5 or 8%, you could end up leaving a lot of money on the table or having to hold it for a lot longer. So if you're looking at a shorter time horizon, I think that you always have to build in a little bit more cushion for yourself. All right, so that now we're jumping into local stuff. Anybody who doesn't care about Columbus have any questions before I move into the Columbus market, or comments? No? All right, I'll keep going then. All right, new listings, or I'm sorry, active listings were down 1.5% in Central Ohio. New listings were only down 4.9%. So again, because the market had started to slow last year, we're going to continue to see these numbers neutralize. We're not going to see as big of drops in inventory or in new listings, because last year at this time, our market was slowing. Solds were down 12.5%. Again, that's a lagging indicator, meaning that's an indication of what was happening in June and July. And then pendings were also down 0.1%, so pretty much even in the market. So the one thing that we did see, and we saw it happen a little bit in July, and then it happened in August as well, is that the number of solds is back below the number of actives, which is definitely important. And then the number of pendings is below the number of new listings, which those two things combined typically lead to slowly increasing inventory month over month, which we anticipate to happen during this time of the year. This is resale versus new construction. So just pulling them out. So when we look at September month to date, we're still down in new listings, down in inventory. You have to take these numbers a little bit with a grain of salt when you're looking at less than 1 month of data, just because of what day of the month it gets pulled on and what day of the week that day of the month happens to be. The for sale numbers, so the amount of new construction available out there on the MLS is up 20% compared to last year, which again, we had talked about earlier. The interesting thing is the new listings are down 6%. And then also the solds, which these two numbers are largely irrelevant in terms of like giving us data points. But you can see that the builders have definitely listed more stuff on the MLS this year than they did last year. This is resale August to September. We can see that we've got 9.1% more inventory. We've got fewer listings, which we'd anticipate. And those are really about the only numbers that we care about there. And essentially, we're just seeing the number for sale continue to go up as we see a slower market, right? So fewer of the new listings are being absorbed into the market, but then we're also seeing the new listing number be down by 19%, which, you know, definitely does slow things down. Last month, we saw the average sales price to original list price go back down below 100% for the first time since March. So that is showing that sellers are having to negotiate or do price reductions more often. We saw the days on market bump back up to 15. Again, we're not anywhere near where we were towards the end of last year, but I would anticipate that as we go into September solds and October solds, if we stay where we're at interest rate wise, I've definitely noticed days on market bumping up across the MLS. I'd love to hear, what are you guys seeing on your listings? Is anybody seeing a specific neighborhood or area that is, you know, more selling better than others? Somebody, anybody, Bueller?
I don't know
Kendra,
the
what about
type of
you?
neighborhood, but
Oh.
I just still see a high activity from investors. So let's just talk Columbus zip codes. And they're still, I mean, I've been dealing with some probate listings this year, and we're just getting, these houses get hammered and they're really poor condition. But I know that's not everybody's bread and butter, you know, from residential side of things, but it just tells me that if you have investors in your network, work on them. If they have to liquidate assets, this is still a really good time to liquidate some investments, because there's still just, there's so much cash in this market. So that might be, you know, just a source of business to maybe focus on these slower months.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else seeing anything in particular? Stephanie, are you still on here? Are you able to talk? I'd love to
Yeah.
hear how the
Yeah.
new builds, what you're seeing on the new build side.
I mean, we kind of at the end of summer had a rush of like all of our spec homes selling almost at the same time. And now we're kind of seeing that has fallen off a little bit. I just think for me personally, it's the first time that I've felt the typical seasonality in years. And any of you with an investor, check out 6723 Skyline Drive. Motivated seller, great investment opportunity.
Yeah, that listing for me, which I do think, yeah, good call to call it out here. And that one for me, I feel like that's kind of been a bellwether for me. Like when you see something in Dublin schools that is sitting on the market under 400, that's something that even last year really wasn't happening. And now we're starting to see some of those. I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is I feel like condition and location have mattered more again. I think, Oliver, to your point, like when you get into the really low investor price ranges where there's still a lot of cash, you still see good movement. But I think, you know, it really, buyers are getting much more picky again about the condition of a property. And which is the way the market is supposed to function, right? If you need work, you should sell for less. But that has not been the way it's been the last 2 or 3 years. And so just making sure that you're setting seller expectations at a listing appointment, I think is extremely important.
I call it the one bathroom rule. You know, the market's like really hot when one bathroom sells just as quick as anything else. And then it's like when you get in these slower days, it's like when you have those 1.5 baths, people just pick them right over because they don't have to settle for that. And that's what I'm kind of seeing right now.
Yeah. So I would just say the biggest piece of advice I can give right now to talking to clients is just make sure, I mean, you don't want to scare sellers, but I also think you have to make sure that you're realistic with them about what to expect, because if they think just because their neighbor's place 3 months ago sold in 2 days that they're guaranteed to do that, they just need to understand that that's not a guarantee. So all right, current inventory is still, as of August at least, under 1 month, which is still absolutely insane. You can see definitely lower than where we were, and this is in the resale market. The new construction market is a little bit higher, but also trending downward as well. Everything's still a seller's market, but definitely the builders are much more willing to negotiate, consider home sale contingencies, negotiate on price, not so much, but consider home sale contingencies and other incentives, mostly to buy down rate and cover financing costs is what we're seeing most often. Active prices are still up 7.3% year over year. Sold price was up 1.4% from July to August. Let's see what's our August to August. I didn't put this in the notes. Average sold price. Active prices were up. Sold prices were up 7.3% year over year for August. So the moral of this story is we went way low on average sales price in January. We've definitely recovered, and we're now basically sitting at all-time highs for average sales price in Central Ohio. So definitely, again, people just don't understand this, but we're still in a really good position from a market perspective. I mean, even houses that are sitting right now are sitting at prices higher than they were last year. So in terms of market rent affordability, we're still sitting in a pretty decent situation. We're seeing year over year increases of anywhere from, 1 bedrooms, kind of like what you said, Oliver. 1 bedrooms are like 1 bathroom resale, right? Like 1 bedroom apartments aren't going to be selling if they can rent a 2 bedroom for another $150 a month. So you see year over year prices on 2 bedrooms up 12%, year over year prices on 1 bedrooms up 1.7%. But at the end of the day, my personal experience is the rental market continues to be strong here in Columbus. And I think as long as it's cheaper to rent than buy, which is the case right now, in most areas and neighborhoods, we're going to continue to see very, very strong rental demand. And that on top of a lot of people moving here, I think we'll continue to see that over the near and far term. And there's all my sources. Mortgage News Daily, if you're looking for interest rate updates on a daily, they also have really, really good articles about the market and everything else. So I would strongly encourage you to keep your eye on that so that you can kind of point your clients to the lender if they need it. And then realtor.com is where I get my national stats. If you're part of KW Consultants, you get Trend Graphics access for free. So just check our website that we have for the office, and then Zumper. All of the stuff I put in here is all available to anybody. And then I know I don't have anything from Altos Research, but if you want like a weekly update on national stuff, the guy who founded Altos Research does a weekly YouTube video. Like I said, it's about 15 minutes long and it's very powerful. I usually listen to it while I'm driving somewhere, but it's good to just stay up to date on the impact of mortgage rates on the national market, which usually parlays pretty well into our local market. So anybody else have any questions before we sign off today? No? Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for coming again. And let's see, Quentin, hold on. What's a good email? You can email me at troy@marshhomegroup.com. I forgot to mention that. And Allison will get the slides out to you, as well as get you on our monthly kind of calendar invite to make sure that you don't miss it again. But yeah, Troy@marshhomegroup.com would be a great email. So if you want a copy of the slides, just let me know. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.